source of its essence. The origin of something is the source of its essence, right? I mean, that makes sense. If we're talking about art as such, what it is as it is, it being art, then we recognize that the nature of its essence, the essence of art, is preceded by the origin. Like the origin feeds, if you will. And this, Heidegger is very conceptually dense, but I'm going to make this sort of tangible. The origin of art informs the essence. It precedes. It's more foundational, in a sense. It doesn't have to be temporally based, but I'm going to sort of make it palatable in terms of time, chronological sort of succession. If I have the origin precedes the essence, right? The origin informs the essence of the thing. And what is the essence? It is the thing as such, art as such. Sort of conceptually dense. I'll return to that idea in a moment. Number 3, the work as artistic piece, right? We'll later talk about the work as almost an Aristotelian efficient cause, the act of physically painting. But essentially here, at this sort of, a few minutes into the lecture series, here Heidegger is talking about the work as the final product, the painting as such, right? The finished work. So the work arises as a consequence of the activity of the art, of the artist. The work arises as a consequence of the activity of the artist. There's something really interesting here, right? We have the use of work in 2 senses. We have the final painting, right, as work, right? This artistic work is the sort of end state, if you will, at least at this level, right? This is the end state, the finished product. And the idea of evoking product, sort of capitalistic, quantifiable concepts to the end state, the art pieces, it's sort of, it doesn't ring well with my ear, but, I have to use vernacular that people are comfortable with. But then we also have work as in, and this is the artist, we have work as in the labor. Labor needed to bring about the work of art. Right? The actual labor, physical labor, manual labor, needed to bring about the work of art. He calls this the activity. Heidegger says activity. So the work arises, the work as end state, arises as a consequence of the activity of the artist. It's sort of obvious, right? The final painting requires a painter. The final sculpture requires, the final sculpture requires a sculpture. The final carving requires a wood carver. And so on. Okay, so that's 3. 3a, here's a quote from Heidegger directly. Quote, "The work arises out of and by means of the activity of the artist. The work, as final product, arises out of, and then obviously this is the means, meaning that labor, activity, becomes the means with which work manifests." I'll say that again, I'll actually write it down, right? And this is important, actually. Labor, and it's obvious, but you'll see that this will be important later. Labor becomes the means with which the work manifests. Right? Labor, activity, becomes the means with which the work manifests. The work manifests as a consequence of the activity of the artist, right? And again, one last time, Heidegger says the work arises, right? The work arises, comes into being, which I'm not going to get into the complex nature of that now. but the work arises, it comes into existence, it comes into being as a consequence of the activity of the artist. Okay? And that just basically means the artist paints the picture. The painting of the picture is the means with which the final painting as work comes into being. Sort of duh. Okay. It'll be complicated substantially later. Right now it's just important that we have sort of a very gross, general, conceptual understanding of this. So, number 4, the work, the artistic piece, becomes the means with which the artist demonstrates mastery. Right? This is very important. And this point I want to talk about a little bit, right? The work becomes the means now. The final product isn't just and this is like, you know, the more series I do though is the more advanced this is going to get, because there comes a point at which my lecture series are just going to be advanced. And I have to sort of take note of that I've been sort of fostering a community for a few years now. And there comes a point at which there's going to be less ghetto philosophy and more just really dense philosophy. And one of these points, some of these points I'm not going to be able to simplify more than it already is. But think about this, right? We recognize that the artist participates through his or her activity in the production of a work. And that activity, that labor, becomes the means with which we acquire the work. We just saw that. So that the activity becomes the means with which we acquire the work of art. That work of art is an end state. It is the product. It is the consequence of activity, the artist's activity. Simultaneously, however, on a deeper level, not a much deeper level, but a deeper level, that work of art isn't just the consequence of the activity. It is, the work of art isn't just a consequence of the activity of the artist, it is also a means, so it is both an end and a means to the demonstration of the artist's mastery. I'll say it again because that's conceptually dense, right? I create, as an artist, a work. And this is the part that I wanted to infuse. And I'm jumping ahead here a little bit. Language, obviously, is a means of demonstrating artistic ability. This lecture series is wholly linguistic. It's wholly language-based. Rhetorical speech, rhetorical analysis, philosophy is language. I consider myself an artist. I really do. I don't have the artistic abilities to paint anything or to sculpt anything or to carve anything, but language is what I dabble in. Insofar as I create a product, being this lecture series, that product is a consequence of me now here working. I'm currently working. I will add, and Jason, remember to watch this part of the video and just have a mental trip out, okay? I'll probably be laughing in sync with myself in the future, and now. But this work, me literally at the whiteboard, working with you know, the implements of my employment, this now is the activity of an artist. The product is this lecture series. This lecture series then is the, in a sense, culmination. It is the product of the labor of an artist. However, this lecture series is also a means with which I demonstrate to myself and the world the mastery of what it is that I do. Right? So there is a sense in which the lecture series, the product of the art, is also a means of demonstrating mastery. So we have, I want to spend a lot of time on that because it's sort of dense. We have the artist, we have the activity, we have the work as product, as end, but this work is also simultaneously a means. It is both, and this work is both a product and at the same time a means. How is it a means? It is a means to